Hello everyone, welcome back once again to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Welcome to MCAS Yuma, Arizona, and welcome to the Miltech Simulations MV... That was so rude. Welcome to the Miltech Simulations MV-22 Osprey. A sort of mixed bag aircraft, both in its real-world application as well as how it's portrayed in the sim. I'm still kind of on the fence about it. It is something totally new to us, a twin rotor VTOL aircraft. So I do commend Miltech for that, but there's areas of improvement for sure, but there's also areas where this aircraft excels, and we're going to be taking a look at both of those, of course, as always, starting with textures and looking at some of the odds and ends, and getting the aircraft started up in the air and taking a look at both STOVL and a vertical takeoff and landing. Without further ado, let's begin. So as our APU spools down, we're going to start, as we always do, with textures, and we'll start with the obvious elephant in the room, the folded and stowed configuration that we currently find our V-22, and this is one of the areas where the aircraft does excel, or I guess rotorcraft, tilt rotors? Yeah, tilt rotor. As far as modeling goes, you have the ability to either fully stow the lift portion of the rotorcraft, or, like I had earlier, just fold in those tip blades. That's very cool and a positive mark. But let's jump further into textures just as an overall view. And I do like a lot of this extra weathering sort of stuff here. Those of you who've been around V-22s, either at air shows, or those of you men and women in the armed forces, I think Air Force and Marines use the MV-22 or the V-22. Maybe there's an Army... Nah, maybe there's an Army variant. I'm not sure. Someone will correct me. I think it's just USAF and USMC who use the V-22. But those of you who've been around it know that it's usually in a pretty weathered state. This is not a new aircraft by any extent of the imagination, and they are all starting to show their age. In fact, there's a replacement program in the works for this very aircraft. No, I'm sorry. That's the replacement for the UH-60. It looks very similar to the V-22. But that is another conversation for another time. Maybe I'll make a, I don't know, an episode of Sample Talk or something where I talk about that. But we're here to look at textures. Up close, they do really fall apart. You know, anything pretty much this distance back, you're good. Some of you eagle-eyed folks might have noticed something when I went around the other side earlier talking about the folded situation of the rotors. Will get to that, don't worry. No sample test passing here. It's all a very external only engine. So external only that the backside just doesn't have a model. That's a huge negative mark for me. Now, if this was modeled where the rotors were always down, like on these static V-22s, like if they were always pointed vertically, well, there'd be another issue to fight with. But I don't know. I find this is unacceptable. I fully admit that there's plenty of cases where, you know, it's really hard to actually find engine outlet photos of the V-22. But I don't think that serves as an excuse for what we see here. Landing lights, I'm also not a huge fan of. The entire lighting package, I think, needs an overhaul, but the modeling of the landing lights here just is not doing it. I believe on the real V-22, I'm actually going to go look at some photos that I've taken. I believe on the real V-22, these fold in. I could be mistaken, though. I do like the accurate model of your FLIR pods there. Not FLIR pods, your light sensors. So let's see here. I've got... show you this guy. Yeah, and you can actually see it is folded in. So we'll switch to my other screen here. This is a photo I took at AirVenture. And you can see those landing lights are nicely folded in position as compared to what we've got going on here in the sim. They just look like big fixed bulbs. And I'm not super keen on that. I don't actually have any photos of it on the ground. I should, though. Maybe they're just not in this album. That's alright. We will persevere nonetheless, but take my word for it, those guys, they definitely don't quite look like that. Frontal profile looks adequate, looks pretty good. Again, a U.S. Air Force V-22, I saw at AirVenture there for comparison. Digitally zoomed to give you a better idea of what's going on. The one in my photo appears to be missing its air refueling probe, but it does have an extra, I don't know what you want to call it, a radome piece here where that's missing on ours in the sim. But we're not going to take points off of that. I don't know what variant of V-22 this is. So we'll move on. We'll just pretend that this imaging system here is stowed. Otherwise, that would be completely and totally unacceptable. Even if it's a radome, that's unacceptable because then you have these weird cross-texture things. So I'm assuming it's an imaging system. Landing gear leaves quite a bit to be desired, if I'm honest. The textures just aren't quite there, and then you've got this big empty gray void that the nose gear goes into. Yeah, not looking the best there. Same with the mains. Still a lot to be desired. I do like the fact that they modeled at least the brake calipers. The rotors are missing. And then you got that same gray void. There are separate actuating landing gear doors on the V-22 when these wheels go inward. I'll show that later on. And then there's a nice, it's not really high quality, but I like how they at least took the time to separate this portion of the tire from the contact patch, so this looks a little bit more worn. I'll give them that. Let's keep moving up the aircraft. All in all, I think the letter texturing is adequate. It's not great, especially when you compare your push-button handle text compared to your rescue arrow. These are default textures in a default livery, I'm sorry, is what I meant to say. I do like the weathered, worn olive drab. Again, it could just be a little bit higher resolution. I think this aircraft was kind of made to shine on a 1080p system build. And that's not what we're rocking here. So a lot of that stuff does show up on higher resolution sim builds. I'm not at all certain what that is. What are you? I couldn't even tell you. It looks like something to do with HVAC, but I'm not certain. Coming up to the top, we've got these nicely modeled vortex generators on the just after the leading edge of our wing here. That all looks very nice. Same kind of deal with the text breaking down as well as your little, I don't even know what these, I want to call them chevrons, but that's not what they are. These guys here kind of breaking down a little bit. And round to the tail. A lot more of the same. You get up close, textures look bleh, but from this distance they are okay. The entire external lighting suite, in my opinion, needs work. I will demonstrate that now, actually. We'll hop inside of the cockpit. We'll throw on battery power. And we should have some external lighting going. Maybe it doesn't run. Nope, it doesn't run unless the EPU's on, so we'll turn on the EPU. Which gives me the chance to talk about the soundscape on this aircraft. It's very good, actually. I do like the soundscape. It's a little loud compared to other aircraft, but that's okay. You know, I can mitigate that. But like I was saying, the lighting suite really needs work. I do like the cast of the lights, especially at night, but you zoom in, you can't see your emitter. You get too close, you can't see your emitter. You come out to here, you can't see your emitter. Well, you can see the emitter, but it doesn't line up with where it's supposed to be. Also, apparently, Flight Sim wants to be frozen right now, so that's fine. Oh, drastic weather change. That's always fun. So there's really not a good distance to be, or a good angle to be at for where that is consistently lit up. And it's the same thing with the port hand side, although it blends a little bit better being bright red as compared to the green. It just doesn't quite do it. That's the position lights. You got one on the tail here. Possibly the best looking one on the tail, just as far as emitter distance. If I go back inside, we'll fire up our other external lights. So we'll do top light, bottom strobe. And we'll turn on the wingtip tip lights, and we'll turn on the form lights. So all of our lighting is now on. You can see the form light sort of dimly glowing against the bright sun. They look a little bit better in the shade here, and they actually look pretty good in low lighting conditions where they're supposed to. Similar story with the blade tip lights. I do actually really like the look of the blade tip lights when the rotors are spinning. That's the one saving grace for this entire lighting system. The fuselage reflection of the beacon here looks very good, but then the actual emission point kind of sucks, so that's a letdown. The tail's just kind of not really all there. I mean, obviously you've got your emitter, but it's weak. So yeah, no real points as far as lighting goes. I will say overall the textures are adequate for a 1080 system, but if you're rocking 1440p or God forbid 4K, you're definitely going to want to consider what else you got for options maybe. Moving inside here, I'm going to go ahead and turn down the sim so I can hear and you can hear me and I don't have to scream. I do like the attention to detail here on the V-22. I've been inside of a handful of them. This doesn't quite do reminisce-wise for me what the interior of a V-22 looks like from memory. I will do a quick and dirty Google search and show you guys what that looks like. Bring you over to here. Zoom it in. Oh, you want me to download a free trial? I'm good. There we go. So, not the cleanest example for a V-22 interior. You can see it's just a lot busier. There's a lot more stuff overhead. Again, we'll go back to the sim so you can compare and contrast. In fact, let's move the sim so that we're looking from the same angle and away from that APU, which is inconceivably loud. So this is roughly the same angle, and you can just tell there's just a lot of detail missing. As a general thing, it's fine, but a lot of detail missing. We'll head into our cockpit here and take a look-see at what's going on in there. The cockpit, for the most part, is actually pretty good. The one thing that I do want to point out, let's bring the sim volume back up. The one thing I do want to point out is, so you have this really cool option to go into FLIR, and you can either do video or a top-down on your PFD, and you can swap these two as well. And you have the same option for your nav system. This is cool and good on this screen here, on your PFD and MFD for the pilot. The co-pilot side, so right now you can see I get that little bit of a flicker if I zoom way out, but for the most part you can see and read the signage. However, if I switch them to the same mode that I have on my PFD, and I zoom out, oh, did they fix it? Oh, they fixed it. Look at that. Updates for days. Anyway, before these screens used to black out and you could not really see anything, so I stand corrected, and that's okay. That's good. I like that. I'm still going to fly like this on the left-hand PFD side. But anyway, so that is rough overview. We'll take a look at some of the cockpit lighting as well. I mean, all in all, this is more than adequate as far as visuals go. I do wish there was a little bit more in-depth work as far as the actual systems in the V-22. You do have this really nice center display, and a lot of your stuff's controlled through here. So I actually have a LTS, that's my lighting button, to bring that up, and I can go to my environmental controls and change those, but I can't seem to actually turn on the ECS. I've tried cold and dark startup, I've tried ready to fly, and these are always crossed out, and it's the same thing with the items on my PFD and MFD. I can't seem to set flight plans, any of that stuff. So, you know, that's something to consider. There's not a whole lot as far as actual usability goes, but it's fun to VFR fly, that's for sure. We're going to go ahead and get the wings unfolded here, and then we are going to do a startup here. So we'll be back with that in just a minute. In fact, you know what? We'll go ahead and speed run the wing unfolding process on the V-22. So it just raised the flaps, or just finished raising the flaps, and now our rotors are going to rotate back into position. And it's worth pointing out, this is all automated. I'm not operating anything here. It's just a button I click, and it does it on its own. Not sure how the real V-22 handles this. I would imagine it's a semi-automated procedure, just like you see on the F-18. Your wing fold and stow is just a pull handle, rotate it, push it back in to lock it in place. The aircraft handles folding the wings. Obviously, this is a little bit more in-depth than just folding wings or rotor blades. And then up go our rotors, so they clear the ground when they unfold. And they'll unfold as well as unfeather. When they are unfolded and unfeathering is complete, and they're going to rotate to a position where the engines can rotate downward. So if we wanted to, I've now got manual control of the nacelles. I can rotate them down, or I can rotate them back up. And that's done with the engine cal number 4 key binding on your aircraft. So let's go ahead and hop inside the cockpit and get ready for a startup. Okay, starting the V-22 is a pretty simple and straightforward process. If you haven't already, we're going to turn on our APU. Ours is already running because I needed it to show off the lighting. But your main battery is here, and then you've got your light, or your APU switch here. And we're going to start the right engine first, and what you'll notice is we'll actually get rotation on both rotors. That's because of the transmission system in the V-22. The aircraft's designed with a bit of redundancy, like we expect in the military. So one engine can actually, in theory, power the entire rotor system. But we're going to use 2 engines today, so we're going to go to the start detent on our rotor. I actually should have made sure that our rotor lock was off. It is, though, so we're good. And there's light off. It's a fully FADEC system, full authority digital engine control. I had to think on that one. It's been a while. So the aircraft handles the entire startup for us. No introducing the fuel, no holding a starter. We just make sure everything is in the green when it needs to be. And it looks like this is going to be a successful startup for us. So there's engine 1 started, and we'll go and do the same thing for engine 2. And like I mentioned, you can see that we've got both rotors spinning even though only one engine is running. There is a heat blur animation for the engines. You can just make it out there. And if I'm quick enough to come back over to here, we're starting to get a little bit of heat wash out of there as well. Like I mentioned before, the soundscape on this aircraft is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. I have no complaints about the soundscape, other than it's a little bit loud. Some of the engine sounds cutouts, like when you're starting, you'll hear this in a second. It just kind of cuts out abruptly once you're started. And the APU is louder than both of the engines. You'll hear that in a second, too. Yeah, see, so there's your startup cutout. So I think they actually took a sound clip from a helicopter of some kind starting, and then they just cut it. Didn't fade it out or anything. And then once we're both started on both engines, we're going to go to the fly condition for both of our levers there. We'll close up the side door here. Nope, that's the ramp. Close up the side door. That's nicely animated. You've got the fold-up door and the pop-down, as well as the rear ramp. We're going to leave that down. I do wish there was an option, and maybe it's just my own ineptitude, but I wish there was an option to half stow the ramp. It will auto-raise itself once we get airborne, but it'd be really cool to have it where you could just have it that way automatically. Let's do a quick hover check. So I'm going to bring our rotors to 90 degrees, dead vertical. Make sure our park brake is off, which it is now. And again, you can see my environmental controls is just not, it's not having it. So if I go to the ECS, it's still just, I don't know. So anyway, let's do that hover check though. Grabbing both throttles since we have two engines. That was another mistake I made when I was first learning this aircraft. Turn up the sim a little bit more. And a quick lift, and then we'll settle back down. Very good. Very good, very good. Alright, we'll tilt the rotors forward to about 75 degrees. 75 degrees. We'll raise that rear ramp. We'll taxi out for a short field takeoff here. Now, one thing I do want to mention on the V-22, as far as the handling goes, the ground handling is very nice. The in-flight handling is very nice. My biggest gripe, which is unfortunate because it's the kind of the main point of this aircraft, is its hovering characteristics. We quite regularly see V-22s at air shows or doing actual combat ops that can hover in place very effectively, both in the X, Y, and Z axis. And I don't know if it's my piloting skills. Like I always say on the channel, I'm not an astute aircraft pilot by any extent of the imagination, or sorry, rotorcraft pilot by any extent of the aircraft pilot. We'll just throw them all in there, right? But I can't seem to get this thing to want to stay still in the Z-axis. I can hold it pretty well in the X and Y, but on the Z-axis, the vertical axis, I don't know. I find I'm just constantly floating the thing up and down, which I don't know. I'm using the exact same controls, the exact same rates as as aircraft that I fly in DCS, rotorcraft that I fly in DCS rather, rotorcraft that I fly in flight sim, and this is just not responding the same way. So those of you V-22 pilots, let me know, does it have the floating tendencies that you see in this video? It is kind of interesting. So it's a single throttle type control for the V-22 on the real aircraft, instead of a collective. It's an interesting ergonomic choice. I feel like a throttle, a forward and aft throttle, is a little bit more ergonomic than a collective would be, so it does make sense. Alright, we're out here on the active. Quick control surfaces check. Very good, very good. Alright, let's go ahead and add some power. And this thing's just going to leap in the air straight away. And then as we increase our forward airspeed, we're going to watch our little gauge here as it shifts down, and we're going to shift our nacelles down to match. So there we are, airborne. Start bringing the nacelles down now. We're going to go to 55%. And we'll bring in the gear. And obviously I can't speak from real life flying experience, but what I've seen with the V-22 is you want to shoot to keep the aircraft level via rotating the nacelles. So you don't want to have an extremely high nose up or extremely high nose down attitude as you're flying. So now we've obviously transitioned to full forward flight. So rotors are pointed straight forward. and we can fly like a normal aircraft. And that's one thing I will give the V-22 is it's a twin rotor counter-rotating. Counter-rotating? No, they're rotating in the same direction. I have no idea how the V-22 controls itself, but it does, and it does a good job of it, so. Do a single high-speed pass. I don't know what the VNE of this aircraft is, but we're doing about 250 knots right now. This whole time I've been talking with my microphone on. How about that? I had to cough and I muted myself. Anyway, I was saying roll right over our origin point. Hazy day in Yuma. There, you're caught up. We're going to come back around and we're going to do what's known as a zoomy, I think. It's a Harrier term. Where they pitch their nozzles down. We're going to tilt our rotors up to gain a very, very, very aggressive climb rate. Ready? Here we go. And nose them back over. Bringing the rotors back to full forward. There we go. Several hundred feet in a matter of seconds. If I continue that, we probably could have gone further and faster. Now we'll get set up for a attempted vertical landing back on the runway. Like I said, I'm not going to make any promises for a smooth landing of sorts. It's going to bring power back to idle. So we're coming in through 200. I'm going to start raising those nacelles to act, one as an air brake of sorts, but also to start configuring us for our vertical landing. Now, where do we want to touch down is the question. I think I see a good spot there. There's a airliner of some kind, maybe a 737. 150 knots. We'll drop the gear. It definitely handles different as compared to a helicopter, most likely because of its tilt rotor function. Oh, we're gonna slam into the ground, huh? Yep. All right. Well, engines are still running. I turned off crash damage, so that's good. Let's try that again. Not like this. Not like this, God, please. So this is that chasing I'm doing. We've got a VVI on the right side of our BFD, and I don't know, I just find myself kind of chasing it. I don't intently look at the VVI. I do try to use external visual aids when I can, because that's what they teach you. So at 90 degrees, our rotors are tilted straight up and down. So if we want to increase our horizontal speed, we're going to nose down a little bit and increase our collective, or our throttle in this case, ever so slightly. And that VVI should kind of stay where it's at. Obviously, we're losing a little bit of airspeed here, and that's all right. I'm actually going to decrease our throttle more. We're going to touch down between these F-18s and this A757? Old engine model 757? Old classic Delta 757. Interesting. ATJ FS2020. Well, not my first choice for transporting the troops, but it's not really up to me now, is it? So all in all, it does, I mean, like I said, you can hold it pretty well on a X and Y axis. It's just bringing it in effectively and smoothly on the Z is my problem. So let's go back over where we were before. Let's see if we can't get a nice touchdown there. Rudder pedals are a little bit lacking in response. You almost have to go halfway through your range to get any rotational rudder response when you're in the air. On the ground they work normally in conjunction with your nose gear, but yes, there we go, chasing the Z-axis again. But it should be a non-issue for us. We'll have to see here. Nice big rotation. We're gonna touch down, hopefully right back where we did before. So maybe it's modeling ground effect. I'm not entirely certain because I don't really get that much of an issue until I'm closer to the ground. But you can see I'm just consistently decreasing power. And what ends up happening is you decrease it too much and then you slam into the ground like a rock. Sort of a gentlest touchdown. So that, guys, is the MV-22 Osprey, done by Miltech Sim. Like I said, I think it needs a little bit of work, especially at the price point. It's definitely more in the premium price area. I think I caught this on sale for about $40-ish. It's normally a little bit higher than that, but it's definitely unique. It's definitely interesting, so I'll give them that. And if it looks interesting to you, I encourage you, as always, to go ahead and give it a try. But that's going to do it for this video. I do appreciate you watching. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. As always, take it easy.